get to grips with arguments about Darwin's delay, particularly the more dramatic varieties exemplified by Desmond and Moore, we need to know something of the tenor of the times in which Darwin was thinking about, and then eventually writing his great work on the origin of species. And the most important thing to understand is just how turbulent the 1830s and the 1840s were. As we will see, Europe was racked by depression, poverty, unrest and disorder. In many countries, this culminated in the revolutions of 1848. Revolution did not eventuate in Britain, but the Chartist movement, at its most extreme, threatened to take the country down that path. When we get the social picture and combine this with both the radical nature of Darwin's theory and the fact that transformism or transmutation, call it what you will, was associated with radicals challenging the accepted order, is it any wonder that some historians might retrospectively perceive fear as a motivation for Darwin delaying the announcement of his grand discovery? It is to this context that we now turn.
Shut up and drink your gin. You're staring at the pocket handkerchiefs, eh, my dear? We just hung them up, ready for the wash, that's all.
Is this a laundry then, sir?
Yeah, that's right, a laundry.
Exactly, my boy. I suppose a laundry would be a very nice thing indeed. But our line of business pays a little better, don't it, boys?
You're all right.
You see, Oliver,
In this life, one thing counts. In the bank, large amounts. I'm afraid these don't grow on trees. You got to pick a pocket or two. You got to pick a pocket or two, boys. You got to pick a pocket or two.
1838, and it's 1 year after Darwin has opened his transmutation notebooks. Another CD, Charles Dickens, writing under the name of Boz, is following up his sensational success Pickwick Papers with an altogether more sombre book. This is Oliver Twist, the tale of the orphan who is made bad by circumstances and is then redeemed. It is a savage indictment of a society that lets the weak go to the wall while the bourgeoisie gets fat. Written at a time when issues of political representation and appalling working conditions are on everybody's minds, when Britain quite often appeared to teeter on the brink of revolution, the themes of the book formed a backdrop to some of Darwin's thinking, particularly the nature of the struggle for existence. If I were to select a decade in the history of Britain that was regarded as the most important of all, I would probably choose the 1830s because there was so much going on then. Not only Darwin developing his theories, but in the realms of politics, economy and society, we're on the verge of absolutely massive change. Political power is still very much held in the hands of the aristocrats, the gentry, the wealthy, the people that could get their hands on power. Now, democracy was not fully fledged at this time. However, in the early 1830s and indeed in 1832, the Great Reform Act occurred, widening political representation, increasing hugely the numbers of people that could vote. Further reform over the next 100 years before suffrage was granted to everybody of adult age. At the same time, we see the rapid progress of industry, the development of the new factory system, which was accompanied by a huge influx of people from villages to the towns. The nature of the economy is such that it is running through cycles at an incredible pace, boom going to bust, going to boom, going to bust. And on the back of that, we see incredible poverty. The new cities just cannot cope. They don't have the infrastructure to deal with the vast numbers of people flocking to them. The people flocking to them are not earning enough money to get themselves a decent living. We see a huge rise in poverty, the emergence, the classic urban slum, poverty that is documented by Engels when he travels around Britain in the early 1840s and produces his report on the state of the English working classes. The response to the massive social dislocation caused by industrialisation by the people in authority can best be characterised as cruel. And this was the thing that Dickens himself was aiming at. Influenced by Malthusian thinking, a new system of workhouses were constructed, virtual prisons for the people who are unable to work or who wouldn't. The workhouses were inspired by the idea that if you made conditions so horrible within them, people would not apply for help. Instead, they'd use their own initiative and go out in the world and find a job. Of course, in times of economic hardship, this was just impossible. Now, the response to these political, social, economic changes, to the deficit in political power, the response to poverty, was the Chartist movement, which from the 1830s campaigned for political rights for all men, seeking to change the system by changing the power structure, and often seeking to resist the Malthusian impetus behind the workhouse measures.